Welcome to the Psych Gym. I'm your trainer, Vanessa Perry, a former mental health therapist turned intuitive counselor. Much like a physical gym, in this space we'll aim to target specific psychological muscles and train them to be stronger. I'm so glad you are joining this gym. Let's hit the weights. Hello again. Welcome to this episode of the Psych Gym. I have completely given up on the video portion if you haven't noticed. I have one video, which is my intro video, and then I took the video off of the other ones that I had recorded because I overthink it. And if there's one thing that I've learned in my life, whether in business or personal, is that when I overthink things, that is when I overcomplicate things and I start to get in my own way. And so there is no surprise that once I got all, I made a big deal out of the video portion, I stopped recording. And that is getting in my own way. So that is what I decided to not do. Now for the topic for today, it's funny because this does actually kind of weave into it a little bit. But the topic that I decided on today is about programming. It feels like another buzzword. It feels like I'm constantly saying it, and maybe people are annoyed by the amount of times that I say it. But I say it because it is super important to understand what's going on inside our brains and how our lives are being driven mostly subconsciously. It's not a new topic, but I feel like when people sit in the space with me, even if they have the concept down or they have the intellectual part of it down of, yes, I know that my programming matters. And I know that I operate from my programming. And I know that there's a lot of autopilot happening. When we actually dig into what that programming is and what that autopilot is, because we start to come into some of the issues in people's lives, they're like, how did I understand the concept but not understand how it was working in my life or not working in my life, as it were, because most people aren't coming to pay me to talk about the things that are working in their lives. They're usually talking about the things that are not. So what is programming? My goal in bringing you this episode is to help you understand that concept of how much of what you're doing every day is a programmed response or a programmed belief, and learn that you can change those things, that you can create differently based on, what you decide in your heart and your soul, or what your life demands of you or asks of you. It's, again, intellectually, people are like, yeah, I know that. But then we don't do it, right? Then we're stuck in this rut of oh my God, life is happening to me. And is it? Is life happening to you? Or is it that we haven't dug deep enough into your belief systems and the things that you are programmed to do to understand that you are carrying out those programs, and those programs are what is making life happen to you? So let's kind of get into how do these programs get here? What is programming? How did it get here? Programming, just like in a computer, is a set of data that tells you what the world is, tells you what to do in it, tells you what you are in it, tells you what other people are in it. And some of the things that I come across in my work with people very often when it comes to programming, things that we have to reprogram most of the time, high percentage, the way that people think about money, the way that people think about relationships, work, food, politics, the world as a whole, femininity, masculinity. There are a lot of things that we are taught because we need to be taught. Our parents need to teach us about the world. Our teachers need to teach us about history and things like that. But what happens is we learn it and then we don't learn more sometimes because it doesn't seem relevant to learn more. So as I wrote a little bit, I don't script this obviously, but I wrote a little bit of, something to keep me on track, because we know that me being on track is a little bit difficult. And when I got to the word teachers, I was thinking about how it feels like I learned a different form of history because I grew up in the Northeast than people did in, say, the Southwest. I, we grew up very heavy on the pilgrims, very, very heavy on the settlements. Um, our field trips were always to like Sturbridge Village and places like that. We did have some Native American education because we had a lot of, in the area that I grew up in, there were a lot of things that were named from Native American words. So it was natural to kind of, talk about some of that history. But when I was in Florida and I was step parenting a child, when she was learning history, I was like, "What are you learning?" Like, what are you like? It was for me some of the for the first time some of the things that I was learning, and it's just that reminder of wow, the world is way bigger than the little education that we get. And when we decide to close off to that kind of thing and decide that we know things, it gets dangerous. And that is the case with all of these things. So a lot of people talk about our programming around money. Did you believe that money was the root of all evil? Did you believe that rich people were terrible people? Because that will form the way that you act with money, the way that you obtain money is, it's directly related to how you're programmed to believe about money. Same thing about relationships, right? Like if we grow up in a home where in the relationship there's one parent that is giving more than the other, we tend to, and it works, it works out really well. We tend to emulate that in our own lives, and it may not work for us, right? And so we'll get into these relationships and we're like, "Oh my God, I'm doing way more than I wanted to, and here I am and I don't know what to do." And then we bring it to our partner and they're like, "What happened? This was not the deal," right? And it's because we discovered that our programming brought us into a place that we did not want to be in. And now we want to change it. And it's like a big thing, right? Because if you're not with a partner who wants to help bridge that gap, we're in trouble. The way that we think about work, right? Hard work gets results. Hard work is the only way. Well, guess what? I know a ton of people who work way harder than me. Tons of people who work way harder than me, and they do not make as much money as me, and they struggle. And so that, like, I don't know how we're still holding on to that programming because it's legitimately debunked. But I think it goes, like, to go on a little bit of a tangent, it ties in hand, right? So if I'm working hard and I'm barely getting by, but I have this belief system about rich people being terrible, and then I'll link those two things together. I'm poor because rich people are rich. Well, now we're in a whole other place of lack mindset. We're in a whole other place of here's where I belong in this world and I can't be anywhere else because that's just not how it is. When, dang it, like, that's not true. That's not true. I know because I see it every day. I help cultivate it every day. I'm an example of it on some levels. Gosh, the list goes on about our programmings, but our programmings are really, hey, I know a lot of things automatically. How do I know all those things automatically? And do I want to know all those things automatically the way that they're coming into my brain right now? Our reactions to things. Do I want to be quick tempered because I learned that quick temper got things done, right? Like I have this belief system that being angry and raising my voice gets things done. Well, yeah, because intimidation works. But do you want people to treat you that way? If you want closeness and you want to be understood and you don't want to be hated and you want people to be open and honest with you, then you've got to worry about, the programming around your confrontation style. So those are just like some examples of programming that I see in my counseling space that we end up having to reprogram quite often. A lot of those areas. It's pretty problematic, but we're working on it, right? Like I feel that I'm here on this planet to do the work and then teach the work, right? I do the work. I do the work a lot. I'm constantly doing the work and then passing on that knowledge and that empathy, right? Because I've been through it to other people. So let's talk about a little bit about how to access this, right? This is the Psych Gym. We're talking about our emotional muscles and strengthening them. And if we want to be able to deprogram and reprogram, we're going to have to learn that process and get that process down so that it's real easy for us to do it. For me, it's real easy for me to spot when I'm operating on program so that I can, dial down on what it is that is actually happening and then create an intervention that aligns more with what I currently believe or am striving to believe or achieve. One thing that is very important to understand is that we all have like intuition. We know this, we have gut instinct. That often will tell you right away, if you're really listening to it, that there's something different about your programming and your current belief system, right? So you'll start to go do something that is like kind of normal and you don't want to do it, right? Like, so like for instance, when I first moved to South Carolina and my business was barely happening. I mean, I think I had like 3 clients perhaps. And I was like, how am I going to survive? I'm now a single parent by myself in a place I've never lived in before. How am I going to survive? So I go and I go for a job interview, and I've always been fairly lucky. I've never really been in a spot where it takes a long time for me to get a job. So I went for this job interview, and it was a therapist position. It's what I do. So I go right back to it. And it was community mental health, which I had decided that I wanted to do over, that more corporate structure type of environment. And y'all, I went in that building and I knew from second number 1, I did not want to be in there. But I kept saying like, well, you need a job. You need to make money. Like you got to be here. You got to do it. So I go through the motions, and they love me. They want, who doesn't love in the mental health field? They love everybody who looks competent because we need people, right? So they're like, warm body, probably good at it. Oh my God, please be here. So I did not let that go to my head and my ego when they, tried to offer me the job on the spot. I was like, I hate everything about this. I want to say no. I don't. So like my intuition was screaming at me. I was sick to my stomach, legitimately physically sick. I wanted to throw up. And I'm like, these are not happy feelings. These are not things that say, oh my gosh, like the thing is here. And so I had to, hey, give me some time to think about it. And I went back to process with my friend whose house I was going to rent. And I was like, I feel really weird about saying no to this opportunity. I feel really weird about it. I think that I'm supposed to do it, but I don't want to. And I don't know why I don't want to. And a lot of things came in for me, y'all, like a lot of things that were programmed within me about the kind of person that I am, being wishy-washy or not wanting to work hard, being lazy, being fairy tale oriented and thinking that I was going to get, the best, most wonderful job ever, and that those things don't exist. I mean, you name it, it came up for me. And, my friend was very supportive. And I'm very thankful for this moment because he was just like, well, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. You have to know that you'll find something better, and I was like, what happened? Like, what? That doesn't go with my programming either. Right? You're supposed to tell me to do it. That's a responsible thing to do. Right? So your intuition is like, if you're paying attention to it, going to tell you right away. And so what happens when that happens though, right? I just gave you a little bit of an example, and I had some help from a friend, but sometimes you don't have a help from a friend. Sometimes it's just you. So you're going to want to ask yourself, you're going to want to do this pause. I talk about the pause all the time, but we're going to do the pause when we start to feel feelings. And we're going to say, what do I think I'm supposed to do right now? What is my brain telling me that I'm supposed to do? Why do I think I'm supposed to do this? Is this my voice, or is this somebody else's voice, or is this society's voice? Where did I learn this as the way? And sometimes it takes a little bit of time. It might be just one conversation that you had with a parent or a mentor. And it may be a series of traumatic events that you're like, oh my gosh, I got to go through all that. So we want to know where I learned this from. And then we want to know, do I still believe in this? I mean, if we're here, the answer is no. I just want you to know that. But sometimes you have to do some convincing and you have to find that on your own. But we wouldn't be here if we were just floating in our intuition and things were aligned. We are definitely in the questioning space because we need to be in the questioning space. So do I want to believe in this? Do I want this? Aside from what I think is going to happen, right? Because our trauma is going to come right in there when I say, do I want to believe this? And it's, no, I want to believe that I'm going to go get like a better job. My trauma is going to come right in and be like, oh yeah? So you're going to turn down a guaranteed one for this magical, mystical one that doesn't exist yet? Right? I mean, y'all know what I'm talking about. This is, I mean, we all have somewhat of this programming. So if the answer is no, I don't want to believe in this anymore, I start to think, do I have new information or do I have accessible information that makes me feel differently about this, right? Like, why am I questioning it now? Whereas before I didn't question it before. Is there somebody that I met that has shown me something different? Is there a new knowledge that I've gained that is telling me something different? I mean, I know, growing up in a very small town, when I think about the expansiveness of my mind because I left the town and saw a lot of different people and different cultures and different areas of the world, it helped me get out of a lot of programming that was just because, if people don't see other places, then they don't talk about other places, or they talk about them in the ways that they've heard about them or seen them, the news or maybe a story. So there is a lot to be said for some of the programming that we have is so limited by the experiences of the people who have taught us. And that's super dangerous, right? Like in a lot of ways. And when we talk about history, it's like, repeating itself. But then also it's dangerous to us because we become limited because of other people's limitations, because those have been programmed within us as our limitations. And it's like 2024, y'all, we don't have to have those. Or the ones that we have are going to be different, right? They're going to be different than the people that taught us. So at the risk of going long-winded about this, I'm going to cut it off here to just kind of give you something to think about in terms of how you're living your life, what your autopilot is doing for you or to you, and another way to use the pause to do something for you so that you can learn about yourself in ways that lead to recreation of something that is yours and not just kind of regurgitation of something that belongs to somebody else. I hope that helps. Thank you for letting me be your guide today. Love y'all. Thanks for listening. To learn more about what I do and how to work with me, head to the psychgym.com to check it out. Keep lifting, y'all. It's worth it.